Alright, man, peace. So I've done a couple of videos on Mr. Joel Embiid, the superstar center of the Philadelphia 76ers, and I've stated point blank that I believe that in the near future he's going to be an NBA MVP. Well, he seems to believe so himself because he's stating that he's going to go for the NBA regular season MVP award, and he's justifying it by stating that, according to him, his team is much better when he's the center of attention and when he's playing extremely well, which he tends to do for the most part, especially in the regular season. For those of us who remember last year, he got hurt in a collision with Markelle Fultz. He missed the last part of the regular season and a lot of the NBA playoffs. He was able to come back and play a little bit against the Miami Heat and also against the Boston Celtics, but he was not as effective as he was in the regular season, which would lend to his assertion that his team basically comes and goes as he comes and goes. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
But we begin today with Joel Embiid, whose confidence was shining on a conference call for NBA Africa yesterday, when he said, quote, "I want to win the MVP. I feel like at the end of the day, it might be an individual award, but when I play better, the team also does."
It's going to be very interesting to watch the rapport, the relationship between Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and how it develops, especially as both of these players grow into NBA superstars. It's one thing to be prospects. It's another thing to be up-and-coming stars. But then when you start to head into that superstar realm, that's when the antipathy can start. That's when the enmity can begin. The jealousy, the envy between teammates. I've seen it many times over the course of my viewership of the NBA. Many good young teams with prominent young prospects or potentially great players were broken apart because of jealousy on the squad. For those of us who've been watching the NBA since the 1990s, you remember the Dallas Mavericks with Jason Kidd, Jimmy Jackson, Jamal Mashburn. You'll also remember the Minnesota Timberwolves with Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury. The Philadelphia 76ers with Jerry Stackhouse and Allen Iverson. Even the Milwaukee Bucks with Ray Allen and Glenn Big Dog Robinson. Those were all good young teams with prominent young players that were broken apart because of jealousy. So we'll see what happens with this team. Joel Embiid is already on record last season as stating, and good for him in stating this, that he knows that eventually the NBA media will try to sow some level of dissension or separation between himself and Ben Simmons. So that means that since he's aware of this, he probably should stay away from making statements like the statement that he's making about how he wants to win the MVP. Because I think that it's going to add an unnecessary dynamic into the up-and-coming regular season. It may put some unneeded or undue pressure upon himself and also Ben Simmons. Even though Ben Simmons is relatively unselfish and he is a point guard, he could look at that quote in a certain type of way, as if Joel is saying, "I'm the best player on this team, I'm the lead guy." And that's truly not something that he should be concerned with right now. I've seen Reggie Miller in interviews stating that one of the factors that stopped that early 2000s Pacers team from being as good as they could have been with the young Ron Artest and Jermaine O'Neal is that both those young players would constantly argue over whose team it was. And this is a team, the early 2000s Indiana Pacers, that was being coached by Isaiah Thomas and still had Reggie Miller on the team. And Reggie Miller had to tell them both, "It's neither of you guys' team, it's still my team." And that's one of the main reasons why that team went nowhere.
I feel like if I'm an MVP candidate, or if I win the MVP, that means we are on a whole nother level. I mean, is this a realistic goal for Embiid next year?
I think that it's a realistic goal, but he should have kept it to himself.
It is.
Yeah.
Because the Sixers are going to be good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is true. And what he said is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
There's some players, when they kind of focus more on their individual play, it can be at a detriment to the team overall goals. No, he's right.
Particularly when you have shot-happy point guards like a Russell Westbrook. People are oftentimes fond of saying that when Russell Westbrook gets a triple-double, the record for the OKC Thunder is better. That's true, but what are their chances of advancing in the playoffs with Russell Westbrook giving himself a green light to take whatever shot he wants?
When he plays at his best, they play great. They're unstoppable. If you look at the numbers, the on-off numbers, not only from games he played versus he didn't play, but also from when he's on the floor versus when he's not on the floor. Yeah, absolutely. It's a realistic goal, not only because he can play at that level, not only because the Sixers are going to be good, but also, Ramona, you know this.
Yeah.
The media loves a good story.
Oh, yeah.
Well, beyond that, beyond the media shenanigans, what Joel Embiid brings to the basketball court is great, highly skilled offense and also very intense defense. He's an extremely high-impact player when he's out there on the basketball court on both ends of the floor. That's what makes his presence so powerful, so potent when he's out there.
This dude is a great story. He's so great in dealing with the media. His rise from, I saw a picture the other day, 2011, him at that camp, him at that same camp as a camper to now. Absolutely, this is a great.
Isn't it about games played, though? Can you win an MVP if you play 60 games? He did. So,
oh my gosh, I'm going to knock on wood as I say that.
Right.
Yes, he is coming into this season relatively healthy. So one would expect him to play at least 75 games this year, Lord willing. Barring injury, hopefully he can stay away from getting injured this season. But I think that if Joel Embiid comes out with some benchmark stats, 26 points per game, 13.5 rebounds per game, 2.5 blocks per game, over 50% from the field, over 75% from the free throw line, over 35% from the three-point line. And if he's able to lead his team to 55 wins or more, his name will certainly be amongst the finalists for the NBA regular season MVP award. One of the matchups that I'll be looking forward to this season is between Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis.
Right, but to me, I don't see. I'm with Amin 100% on this. I see no reason why, if the Sixers are the 1 or 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, they should be really, really good. If Embiid's going to put up numbers, he's going to be their best player. And I think we all do kind of enjoy fresh blood in the MVP conversation. Yeah. We all have a tendency to kind of inject that guy. Yeah. We'll start doing it in November and December. Is that guy an MVP candidate? And if you start creating that buzz, the Sixers are good. I see no reason why he's not in the conversation.
Well, here's the thing with Embiid. This is his MO. He puts it out there, so he has to back it up. He's not worried about having a bad year after saying I want to be the MVP and then us trolling him all year long. He says that because he wants to put that pressure on himself. He wants that narrative started.
All that is very true, but one thing that we must remember is that Joel Embiid is a big man. He's a center. So in order for him to make his dream come true, all of his teammates are going to have to be confederate with him. Ben Simmons is going to have to be willing to work with him. And we'll see what happens. Another great young team that broke apart because of inter-team jealousy was Penny Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal. And Penny Hardaway was a point guard.
He wants to talk about it from the jump. And I think with Philly, we talked all in the offseason about, do they need another star? He's like, no, I want to be as good as any of the guys you mentioned.
The thing I was just thinking about is he would be the most charismatic MVP candidate since LeBron, really. Since LeBron won it. Because look, I love Steph and Harden and KD and Russ. And these are all great players, deserving MVPs. Personality-wise, they don't measure to this guy, right? MVP.
I don't see the great charisma in LeBron James, Amin Al-Hassan. I thought that you were going to say the most charismatic MVP since Charles Barkley. When I think charisma, I mean you look forward to their interviews to hear what they're going to say because it's going to be extremely entertaining. I don't think of LeBron James as having a charismatic personality. That's just me. I certainly don't think that he's any more charismatic than a Russell Westbrook or a Stephen Curry or even a Kevin Durant. As a matter of fact, I think that Stephen Curry's game on the floor is far more charismatic than LeBron James's game.
MVP trophy and Joel Embiid.
Oh my God, that speech! I want to hear the speech right now.
Tomorrow.
The NBA awards show wants people watching it.
That's
MVP to Joel Embiid.
And
Those are very similar to the benchmark numbers that I stated that he would need to get in order for him to cement himself as a possible finalist for the NBA regular season award. A little bit better than 25 a game. I would say somewhere around 13.5 rebounds a game, over 2 blocks a game. And those other proficiency percentage numbers that I stated, over 50% from the field, over 75% from the line, over 35% from three. He'll be amongst the 2 or 3 or 4 guys' names that will be bandied about to win that award.
Interesting for a center to put something out here like this because this is the era where the centers are like endangered species in the NBA.
A lot of that is narrative. You could have said that maybe 5 years ago. But I think that what we've seen in the last 3 years or so is a center renaissance. As a matter of fact, one can certainly make the case that the NBA has the most skilled and prominent crop of big men since the early 90s. You really can say that when you have an Anthony Davis, you have a Karl Anthony Towns, you have a Joel Embiid. On a lower level, you have Jokic up there in Denver. There are a lot of good young big men in the NBA right now.
All right. Embiid also addressed the Sixers' lack of offseason moves, depending on who you ask. There was talk of the Sixers being in on Paul George and LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard, but none of them landed in Philly. He said on the same conference call, quote, "When my season ended, there was a lot of talk about adding guys. I literally did not care because I want to get better. I want to be better than those guys that were..."
Well, I have a hard time believing that you literally did not care when the names of possible free agent acquisitions was brought up, because you spent a large part of the summer right after the finals ended trying to recruit LeBron James over the internet. So I have a hard time believing that Joel Embiid.
And if I'm not better already than them, Royce, do you think the Sixers needed to add another offseason, start this offseason?
I think
Joel says, if I'm not already better than them. He talks a lot of hot shit for being the best player on a team that lost in 5 games to a Boston Celtics team that was without their 2 best players, at least their 2 best players on paper. They were without them. And your team lost in 5 games, bro. You have a ways to go to redeem yourself. You allow Aaron Baines to stop you at the basket in a pivotal moment for your team in Game 5. That's what you did.
I think right now, Ramona, they're kind of playing 2 different games here. And part of it is you want to try to accelerate.
Yeah.
And if they want to accelerate into true title contention right now, they probably did need another star. They probably did need another player.
Absolutely. Paul George would have been perfect for them. They certainly made the right decision not trading for Kawhi Leonard, because he's going to be a free agent, so you can shoot your shot after this season. At the end of the day, all your best players are younger than Kawhi and Paul George. So it's not like it's a race against time. Either they want to come and play for the Philadelphia 76ers or they don't.
Player, but if they're trusting the process, if they're playing the long game here, if they're letting their young players get better, then if you bring in another star, he might stunt the growth of some of these other guys. He could stunt the growth of Ben Simmons, stunt the growth.
I don't think that bringing in another star would stunt the growth of their young guys, as long as that star has a skill set that's complementary to what the Philadelphia 76ers already have. That's why I state, and many other people have stated this already, that Kawhi Leonard or Paul George would have been perfect on their team. But LeBron James, no. Because we already know the only system that LeBron James can play in. And that totally would have nullified Ben Simmons, and it really would have put him in a funk.
Growth of even Embiid, and maybe they already have that star. Maybe Markelle Fultz.
And that's the funny thing about Joel Embiid trying to beg LeBron James to come play on Philadelphia. Joel did not understand that he would have become the Kevin Love / Chris Bosh of that team. And he would have been pissed off also.
Is that star? I know this will only be his 2nd season, but if we're going to talk about it later, but if we're to believe some of the things we're hearing about his offseason, maybe he's that kind of guy that comes in and really injects something into the Sixers.
You know, I understand, risk reward, right? What you give up to get something. I think so. Kawhi would have been perfect. I think that would have been the perfect compliment, right? The question is, do you give up 3 guys that they really value, whether it's Saric, allegedly Fultz, and then Robert Covington? Those are 3 Philly guys, right? They're guys that they drafted, that they developed. Give them up for a guy who can walk in a year.
Absolutely.
That's a scary thought for a team that already, has a great future. It's not like Toronto, right? Toronto's sitting there looking and saying, maybe this is as good as we can get. So
that is as good as Toronto can get. And what Toronto's going to do is they're going to give Kawhi half the season to figure out whether he likes the environment or not. And if they think that he's still going to leave by the All-Star break, or by the trading deadline, I should say, they're just going to trade him. But what Philadelphia is banking on is that they may be able to sell Kawhi on the city in the offseason and bring him in as a pivotal acquisition without having to give up any of their younger assets, which is an extremely shrewd decision. Why trade anybody for a guy who you already know does not want to be in San Antonio and is going to walk in a year? And it will also give him an entire season to check out the landscape of the Eastern Conference and decide to himself possibly that he might want to stay in the Eastern Conference. And it just might not be Toronto. Those are the things that you may have to be thinking about if you're a Philadelphia 76er team. Or hell, maybe even a Boston Celtics team. I would not count out the Boston Celtics in the Kawhi Leonard sweepstakes still.
So it's worth the gamble. For Philly, they could say 2 years from now we might be incredible. So is it worth the gamble bringing a guy in who may leave at the end of the year? I think they need another player to contend this year, to truly contend, to say we can go out there and win a championship. But it's not like they're going to be trash. They're going to be really good anyway.
And the whole thing with the Sixers, they're so young, and Embiid is already proclaiming, this is my team. He's been saying that for 3 years. If you bring another star in there who's older, then that changes the ego dynamic there, too. I mean, if you bring in LeBron, whose team is it? LeBron's team or Joel Embiid's?
Well, we could leave the LeBron conversation alone. We already know that LeBron is in L.A. That's done. That's a conversation that you were supposed to have in depth about 3 or 4 months ago. I think that LeBron already understood that the dynamics would not have been correct on that Philadelphia 76er team for him to be successful. They don't have enough outside shooting, and Ben Simmons would have just clogged the floor. And then what would have made it even more awkward is that Ben Simmons is actually on LeBron James's Clutch Sports roster. So now you have a young, prominent player like a Ben Simmons who's pissed off that you're taking his spot, his slot, possibly a lot of his minutes, his role. And that might cause him to want to leave Clutch Sports. So that was a good business decision by LeBron James to not allow himself to get suckered in to playing in Philadelphia and succumb to the possible allure of having 2 of the best young players in the NBA playing alongside him, knowing damn well they don't fit well into the LeBron James system.
It's LeBron's team everywhere.
And speaking of Kawhi, so if you bring in Kawhi, what would you rather have? I mean, would you rather have one great shot at the finals or 5 really, really, really good ones? Would you rather give yourself more chances or one really great chance? Because that's kind of what they would have been looking at.
Yeah.
I agree, and beyond that, if you're the Philadelphia 76ers and you're looking at the landscape of the Eastern Conference, you have to be telling yourself right now, Joel Embiid is what, 24 years old? Ben Simmons is what, 21 years old? I believe even Robert Covington is under 25 years old. Your biggest competition are the Boston Celtics, and they could be a team that has chemistry issues this season with a multitude of talent. They almost have a surplus of talent. That may actually force Kyrie Irving to leave the team after this season and go to the New York Knicks, which allegedly, according to many reports, he's planning to do anyway, and possibly team up with his good friend Jimmy Butler. So if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, you have to pretty much just sit back and allow these other teams to just come back down. You're already considering yourself on their level anyway. So sometimes it's just about allowing yourself to mature and allowing these other teams to deteriorate from within. Because most likely the Toronto Raptors are not going to keep Kawhi anyway. So once he leaves, they're certainly going to drop down to the rest of the pack, really below the pack.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's always a chance that Kawhi could stay. So that weights it a little bit more, but it's still, you're right. It's the idea of how big of a window do we want? And right now, staying pat with those guys. And by the way, they added Wilson Chandler. I think that's a nice little pickup there.
That is a nice little pickup. It should give them an added boost off the bench.
Losing Bellinelli, losing Ilyasova hurts, but getting Wilson Chandler back, that helps a little. But it is, we all agree right now.
Losing Bellinelli and Ilyasova does hurt them in regards to going against most of the teams in the NBA. But it was very clear that they were dealing with a serious foot speed deficiency when they faced off against the Boston Celtics. The Celtics were just too fast for them. And one of the reasons for that is that Ilyasova and Bellinelli could not keep up with the Celtics' assets in the open floor. They just could not. They could not keep track of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. The Celtics were just way too fleet of foot for them.
They're going to be really good. They're not quite on that championship level.
This is the part where the Sixers fans don't like when we bring up that they could have drafted Jason Tatum #1 overall and fit into that spot that they need. And small forward. Oh, sorry.
Well, I mean, we'll see what Fultz.
Sorry, Sixers fans.
See, that's the thing. I know we're going to move on right here to the Fultz topic, but that's going to be really interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, when the Sixers drafted Markelle Fultz first overall in 2017, they thought they had their third star. But after a rookie season in which he played just 14 games, Fultz' trainer Drew Hanlon has high hopes for what the rising sophomore can do in the league. Hanlon told Fox Sports 1, "I literally think that if he's back to 100%, I think he's immediately an all-star." I know that is a bold statement, but I work with a lot of...
That's beyond a bold statement. That's a very irresponsible statement, especially for a young man coming off of what appeared to be not just physiological, but psychological issues last season. You're putting a lot of undue pressure and unnecessary pressure on him for this up-and-coming season.
A lot of all-stars, and I think I have the right to say that. I mean, are Fultz' shooting woes behind him? And if so, is Hanlon's assessment a real possibility?
I don't like being this guy, but when you have a year like his, I get to be this guy. Do it on the court. Do it.
Thank you, sir. I agree.
Right? Get to do this to gods. Do it when it counts, right? because he struggled, right? He struggled all year long, pretty much. He didn't play all year long, and then when he did play, their shot still didn't look great. As far as he could be an all-star immediately, the only qualifier I would say is an Eastern Conference all-star, because you're looking at Kyrie Irving and Kyle Lowry,
Victor Oladipo.
I mean, that list is really good. John Wall and Brad.
Markelle Fultz is not going to make the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference, no conference's all-star team. That's why I have no idea why you're entertaining that statement, Amin El Hassan. That's also why I stated that for that person to say that about Markelle Fultz, that is very irresponsible, especially since it's very clear that everyone should be taking baby steps in regards to how they evaluate him.
The guard list is not that deep in the East, so sure, but
Bro, the guard list is not that deep in the East, but Markelle Fultz is coming all the way from the bottom. It's not even like he's a good player coming off of injury. He's coming in all the way from the very bottom.
Talent's never been the issue with Markelle Fultz. Everybody who watched him work out said he was amazing. He's been great in workouts. He just hasn't been great in games, and that's the question of it.
Well, shit, that's like saying somebody's great shadow boxing in front of a mirror, but we have not seen him in a real fight yet. What does that even mean?
Is it the shoulder or is it the mind? And I don't think he's been working with Drew Hanlon for 2 years. I think this is just this summer thing. Yeah. And Drew Hanlon is also Joel Embiid's trainer. He's Jason Tatum's trainer. He works out here in Los Angeles. The fact that he's working with Embiid's trainer in the offseason, I like that. I like that those two are close and that Embiid has really been his biggest supporter the whole time. But doing it in workouts.
Well, don't y'all think that this might be something? There might be a strategy here by Drew Hanlon in terms of confidence.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. But I think that sometimes you could talk a little bit too much.
Yeah. You talked about is it between the ears or is it really the shoulder?
That's right.
And this might just be a confidence thing because I'm with Amin though. I hate to be the guy, but I want to see it to believe it. I want to see it on the court to truly believe it, that he's taking a step forward.
But going back to what you talked about, Sixer fans not wanting to hear, oh, you should have taken Tatum. I think the book is still open, right?
Well, how many times are we going to say that about other teams? The Lakers should have taken Tatum. The Sixers should have taken Tatum. I mean, we don't live in a shit-up world. It is what it is. You drafted who you drafted. Now it's the job of your coaching staff to turn that asset into something from potential to actuality. That's all it's about.
Right. Tatum had a great year and particularly great postseason. This is literally year one of what we hope to be 12, 15-year careers for both these guys.
That's right.
Let Markelle Fultz know, right, everything's in the past. It's all beyond him.
Thank you, sir. You think like a man. Good job.
His trainer's saying that he's working out great, playing great. All right, now's your chance to go and restart the conversation. And all those people who rush to say they should have taken Tatum, say, oh, wait a second. Maybe it's a lot closer than we thought.
He wasn't the number one overall pick by complete accident.
They traded up for him because he had incredible workouts.
And if you look at these videos of this guy, there's some incredible skills.
I've watched him play, obviously Pac-12 team, so saw him at Arizona State, saw him. And I talked to Pac-12 coaches, and they all, at the time, were saying, far and away, the best player in the conference. This is a time where everyone was saying maybe Lonzo Ball is the better player. Far and away, the best player in the conference was Markelle Fultz. So it's not like Philly was reaching when they took him.
He was the consensus number one.
Yeah.
Consensus number one. And also his game is so different from what Ben Simmons does. Like, they actually can come.
That's the point. They complement one another very well. Beyond that, Jason Tatum is about 6'7". He's very, very slim right now. But one would expect him to grow into being a small forward. Right now, you need a shooting guard to pair with Ben Simmons.
Good compliment each other, absolutely.
If it actually happens on the court, I hope it happens. I'm rooting for it. All right. Coming up, we got Matt.
But anyway, that's basically it on that pertaining to Joel Embiid, his proclamations, as well as what the potential will be for the Philadelphia 76ers. We'll see what happens. Peace.